They weren't just banned, they were buried so deep, most people don't even know they ever existed. These cars were too fast, too dangerous, too strange, or simply too far ahead of their time. Some were killed by regulators, some by lawsuits, and a few were so wild their own makers pulled the plug before they hit the streets. Here are 12 ultra-banned cars ever made. Machines so secret and so forbidden, you've probably never seen them until now. The 1994 McLaren F1 LM spec, especially the near-mythical prototype known as LM5, isn't just another rare supercar tucked away in a collector's temperature-controlled garage. It's something altogether rarer. A rolling testament to a time when the boundaries between road car, race car, and outright engineering obsession blurred into something so raw and elemental that even the engineers at McLaren quietly admitted it was bordering on madness. Born from the already uncompromising McLaren F1 LM, which itself was created to honor McLaren's stunning victory at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1995, the LM spec prototype was the equivalent of a car company turning to its most obsessive engineers and telling them, forget the rulebook, build the wildest thing you can imagine, then see if it can actually move under its own power. And what they built was astonishing. Start with the engine. Gordon Murray's beloved 6.1-liter BMW V12, already one of the most legendary engines ever placed in a road car, now tuned and recalibrated to produce well over 680 horsepower without a single turbo, supercharger, or electronic governor in sight. No filters, no softening of the exhaust note, no attempt to restrain its voice to satisfy noise regulations. At full throttle, it sounded less like a car and more like a weaponized cathedral organ, deep, metallic, and so loud it physically pounded the air out of your chest. Even at idle, it was intimidating, the kind of noise that made pedestrians turn, stare, and either grin or cover their ears. But the LM spec wasn't just about raw power. The standard F1 was already impossibly light for its size thanks to an expensive carbon fiber monocoque. But the LM spec went even further. Every ounce was questioned and shaved off. Stripped interior panels, thinner glass, ultra-light racing seats, and minimal carpeting. Add to that the iconic high downforce kit, a towering fixed rear wing, an exaggerated front splitter, extra cooling ducts carved into the carbon bodywork, and the LM spec looked ready to devour racetracks rather than grace high streets. Its wide stance and squat predatory posture made it look like it could pounce at any moment, an impression only reinforced when you heard the V12 snarl to life. But what truly sets the LM spec, and prototype LM5 in particular, apart from modern hypercars is what it didn't have. No traction control, no ABS, no electronic stability program. The car's only driver aid was the skill and bravery of the person gripping the three-spoke steering wheel. The steering itself was unassisted, the clutch heavy and unforgiving, and the gearbox was a beautiful but stubborn 6-speed manual that required precision and confidence. Every millimeter of throttle travel mattered. Every small correction at the wheel had immediate consequences. Driving it wasn't just about reflexes, but about sensing the car's mood, feeling the vibration of the chassis through the seat, the way the tires bit or slipped depending on the tarmac. The LM spec demanded everything from you, and it gave everything back, unfiltered, unsoftened, terrifying, and sublime. It wasn't just loud and difficult to drive. It was so extreme that in several countries, it couldn't even be legally registered for road use. The LM spec prototypes didn't bother to hide their track-first nature. They were too loud to pass noise regulations, too raw to satisfy emissions tests, and too close to a full-blown race car to ever convince an insurance company they belonged in traffic. And yet that's precisely what made them legendary. Prototype LM5 wasn't just a hypercar. It was McLaren's engineers showing what was possible if you cared nothing for practicality, laws, or creature comforts, only for mechanical purity and the thrill of the drive. Imagine what it must feel like to sit in the center seat, flanked by two passengers, and fire up that V12. The exhaust barks awake, rattling windows. The entire carbon monocoque hums and buzzes with barely contained power. Push the accelerator and the car doesn't just move, it surges, snarls, and lunges forward with a violence that modern, computer-governed hypercars simply can't match. Every gear change is deliberate, every corner an exercise in controlled fear, and every mistake can cost you dearly. But in that dance of danger and speed, you experience something modern cars, with all their digital filters, can't replicate. A raw mechanical intimacy that connects man and machine. Would you dare drive it on real streets? Most wouldn't. The LM spec does not make allowances for traffic, speed bumps, or inattentive drivers around you. It asks for your full attention and respect and repays it with an experience so intense it borders on spiritual. It's not a car for daily errands or quiet Sunday cruises. It's a weapon disguised as art, or perhaps art disguised as a weapon. And that's why the 1994 McLaren F1 LM Spec Prototype LM5 remains more than just a footnote in automotive history. It's a testament to what happens when engineers ignore compromise, when performance becomes the only goal, and when a machine is built purely to celebrate speed, danger, and the thrill of mastery. In an era increasingly ruled by electronic safety nets, the LM spec reminds us of what we once dared to build and what we once dared to drive. Legendary? Absolutely. Terrifying? Without question. And for those who truly understand cars, that's exactly what makes it beautiful. The 1970 Porsche 91730, nicknamed the Can-Am Killer, isn't just a car you read about in racing history books. It's the mechanical equivalent of a legend whispered in racing circles. A machine so absurdly powerful and so mercilessly dominant that it didn't merely win races, it made everyone else question why they bothered showing up. Its very existence is a reminder of what can happen when brilliant engineers, freed from the shackles of regulation and budget, decide to answer one simple, dangerous question. How fast can we really go if nothing holds us back? To understand why the 91730 became a myth, you have to start with its bloodline. It was the final and wildest evolution of Porsche's already fearsome 917 program that had conquered Le Mans in the early 70s. But Can-Am racing was a different beast altogether. There were practically no limits on displacement, boost, or innovation. It was a playground where engineers could bring their most radical ideas to life, a series where too much power didn't really exist, at least until Porsche showed the world what too much truly meant. At its heart lay a monstrous 5.4-liter twin-turbocharged Flat 12. In race trim, it produced around 1,100 horsepower, already enough to embarrass anything else on track. But in qualifying trim, with the boost dialed up, it could unleash close to 1,500 horsepower. Imagine that in the early 1970s, more power than modern hypercars without the safety nets of traction control, ABS, or stability systems. Just raw, unfiltered violence delivered through the right foot. Even the throttle itself was a hair-trigger weapon. Push just slightly too far, and the rear wheels would turn to smoke even at triple-digit speeds. The sheer numbers still sound surreal. 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 2 seconds, 0 to 100 miles per hour in roughly 3.9 seconds, and a top speed of around 240 miles per hour depending on gearing and track. But the real insanity wasn't just straight-line speed. It was that Porsche made this sledgehammer of an engine work in a chassis that could actually take corners, in a car driven by men brave enough or mad enough to tame it. Watching Mark Donohue behind the wheel was to watch mechanical and human skill fuse into something unstoppable. And unstoppable it truly was. The 91730's dominance in the 1973 Can-Am season was so overwhelming it turned the series into a procession. Donohue won 6 of the 8 races, and in many sessions, the only question wasn't whether he'd win, but by how embarrassingly wide the margin would be. Competitors, no matter how talented, simply didn't stand a chance. It wasn't a level playing field. It was Porsche bringing a nuclear warhead to a fistfight. Yet what's most fascinating isn't just what the car did on track, but what it did to the sport itself. The 91730 wasn't just fast. It was so fast it made Can-Am unsustainable. Costs exploded as competitors tried, and failed, to keep up. Crowds began to lose interest in a series with a foregone conclusion, and ultimately the rulemakers had no choice but to step in. Restrictions were imposed to limit turbocharging and fuel, effectively banning cars like the 91730 overnight. The Can-Am Killer nickname wasn't just bravado, it was literal. This single car ended an entire era of racing excess because it showed what no limits really meant. A car so perfect in its brutality that it erased the competition itself. But what does that say about us as racing fans and as engineers? There's something almost tragic in realizing that true, unrestricted performance can't coexist with fair competition. The 91730 story is the ultimate answer to what if we removed the rules? And the answer is both glorious and unsustainable. Imagine standing trackside when it thundered past, the turbochargers howling like metal banshees, the shockwave rattling your chest, the exhaust note crackling like a string of detonations. You'd see the bright Sunoco blue and yellow blur carving through corners, the tires barely clinging to the tarmac under monstrous torque. It must have felt like staring into the future, only to realize that the future might be too fast for us to handle. Driving it required a blend of courage, precision, and utter respect for physics. There were no digital helpers, just the driver's own senses and reactions. Every lap was a dance with disaster. Too much throttle, and the rear would spin instantly. Too little, and you'd never unlock its savage potential. Even idling in the paddock, the car shook and rattled as if caged, barely contained rage waiting to be unleashed. And yet, despite its terrifying power, the 91730 remains oddly beautiful, not in the sense of delicate design, but in its purity of purpose. It was a machine built with one goal, to go faster than anything else, regardless of consequence. And it achieved that so spectacularly that it rewrote what racing cars could be and what racing itself should allow. So what really happens when you build a car so fast it ends the race series itself? You don't just dominate the sport, you redefine its boundaries, force everyone else to catch up or give up, and in the process create a legend that outlives the races it ran. The 91730 isn't just a car, it's the moment motorsports stared into the abyss of absolute performance and quietly decided it was too much, even for the bravest souls on the grid. And that's why, decades later, it still fascinates, frightens, and inspires anyone who loves racing. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona and the 1970 Plymouth Superbird weren't just bold muscle cars. They were radical statements on 4 wheels, aerodynamic weapons built for one purpose: to bend air itself into submission and obliterate NASCAR's speed records. These winged warriors, as they came to be known, represented the most unfiltered kind of racing ambition. What happens when engineers, freed from restraint, let numbers, wind tunnels, and victory stand above style, sanity, or even sales? They emerged at a time when the battle on American racetracks was becoming an engineering arms race. Dodge and Plymouth, desperate to outpace Ford on NASCAR's superspeedways, turned to the wind tunnel, a place few muscle car designers of the era had ever seriously visited. What they created looked nothing like the average family Charger or Roadrunner. The Charger Daytona arrived first in 1969, a huge, shark-like aerodynamic nose cone that replaced the blunt grille, and a towering rear wing that stood nearly 2 feet high. The wing wasn't there just for shock value. It was placed in the clean airflow above the car's roofline, so it could actually push the rear wheels down at over 200 miles per hour without disturbing the trunk's operation. Then came the Superbird in 1970, Plymouth's answer that followed the same philosophy, an even wilder wedge-shaped nose, and an iconic wing that became instantly recognizable, even to those who didn't know a carburetor from a crankshaft. Under the hood, both cars could be had with the legendary 426 Hemi, making them as ferocious in a straight line as they were unstoppable around the big banked ovals. And unstoppable they truly were. These cars weren't just fast, they were rewriting what fast meant in American stock car racing. The Charger Daytona was the first NASCAR vehicle to officially break 200 miles per hour on a closed course, a milestone that seemed unthinkable just a few years prior. Racers behind the wheel spoke of the eerie calm once the aero started to work, how the front end no longer floated at speed, how the rear wing nailed the back wheels to the asphalt, giving a sensation of stability no ordinary muscle car could match. The effect was so dramatic that on the right track, the Daytona and Superbird didn't just win, they dominated. But that success carried a price. NASCAR, suddenly worried that speeds were climbing into genuinely dangerous territory and facing complaints from rival teams who couldn't keep up, changed the rules almost overnight. They imposed stricter limits on engine size for cars with special aero features, making the big wing cars instantly uncompetitive. Just like that, the Daytona and Superbird went from revolution to relic, banned by the same series they were built to conquer. And here's the irony. For all their brilliance on the track, they were misfits in dealer showrooms. Many buyers thought the massive wing was absurd, a gimmick too wild for daily life. Dodge and Plymouth had to build these cars in limited numbers to qualify for NASCAR's homologation rules, but selling them wasn't easy. Some sat unsold, discounted by dealers, or had their wings removed entirely to attract more normal buyers. What people didn't see at the time was that they weren't buying a car, they were buying a piece of racing history in its rawest form. Today, of course, they're seen as legends. The Daytona and Superbird are celebrated not just for their rarity, but because they represent something almost extinct in modern racing, a moment when engineers didn't hold back, when the wind tunnel ruled over marketing focus groups, and when winning at the track mattered more than anything. They're weird, yes, in the most wonderful, unapologetic way. They're fast, so fast that the rule makers had to step in to slow them down, and they're perfect at winning. So perfect, in fact, that they forced NASCAR to admit there was such a thing as too perfect. So were they too weird, too fast, or too perfect? The answer is yes. Gloriously, absolutely, and unforgettably all three. They didn't just cheat the wind, they redefined what racing cars could look like, what they could do, and how far a brand would go to put its name in the winner's circle. Even half a century later, when you see that impossibly tall wing crest a hill, or that shark nose come into view, your pulse quickens. Because these cars aren't just icons of NASCAR's past, they're monuments to the wildest chapter of American racing history, when aerodynamics met audacity and won. The 1997 TVR Cerbera Speed 12 isn't just another chapter in the long, delightfully chaotic story of British sports cars. It's something far more fascinating. A machine so brutal, so utterly untamed, that even its creator openly admitted it should never, ever be let loose on public roads. In an industry obsessed with pushing limits, the Speed 12 stands almost alone. The car that went too far, even for the fearless men who built it. The idea was outrageous from the very start. TVR, already known for cars that were hilariously fast, gloriously raw, and often terrifyingly temperamental, wanted to build a car that could stare down the likes of McLaren's F1 and the legendary Jaguar XJ220. But TVR's approach wasn't to refine, polish, or electronically civilize anything. It was to take the blueprint for their Cerbera coupe, reinforce the chassis with enough steel to handle double the power, and then drop in an engine that was practically a declaration of war on common sense. That engine was something of a monster, a 7.7-liter V12, essentially made by joining together two of TVR's own straight sixes, tuned to produce well over 800 horsepower, and in racing trim, they tested it closer to and reportedly beyond 1,000 horsepower. In the mid-1990s, that was sheer lunacy, numbers that would have embarrassed anything outside of Formula One or top-level Le Mans prototypes. But the truly wild part? There was no traction control, no ABS, no stability systems, and no electronic guardians of any kind. It was just you, your bravery, and a throttle pedal that unleashed an avalanche of torque. Peter Wheeler, the famously stubborn and eccentric boss of TVR, insisted on personally driving the Speed 12 prototype on public roads before the company greenlit production. After just one outing, he returned pale-faced and declared it flatly unfit for the road. Too powerful, too violent, and too unpredictable for any sane person to drive safely. For a man who'd spent years selling famously wild TVRs, this was saying something. And so, almost overnight, TVR scrapped plans to produce a run of road-going Speed 12s. They quietly canceled customer orders, refunded deposits, and retreated, leaving only a handful of race cars and a single road-legal one-off that was later sold to a private collector. That single car still exists, a mythic presence in the automotive world, often wheeled out at shows where crowds gather not because it's pretty, though it is brutal and striking in its own way, but because it's living proof of what happens when the urge to create something extreme goes unchecked. But the Speed 12 story is more than just horsepower figures or quarter-mile times. It's about the raw essence of automotive madness. A company with limited resources but unlimited ambition, building something so savage it scared even its creator. The bodywork was made of carbon fiber and lightweight composites. The suspension was pure motorsport grade. The brakes were enormous and brutally effective, but the car's character remained that of a caged animal. Every review, every rumor, every whispered anecdote from someone who's seen it or driven it paints the same picture. The Speed 12 didn't just demand skill, it demanded absolute, unwavering respect. Imagine what it must have felt like behind the wheel. A driving position so low you'd feel the tarmac vibrating under your seat. A view dominated by bulging carbon arches and vents, and the knowledge that with one twitch of your right foot, you could summon 4-digit horsepower with zero electronic safety net. The sheer fear and thrill would have been inseparable. Could you own something even its creator was afraid to sell? For some, the answer would be yes, because the Speed 12 is a unicorn, a physical embodiment of what happens when passion and engineering ambition override caution. It's not refined, it's not sensible, and it's certainly not comfortable, but it's pure, unapologetic automotive audacity, distilled in carbon fiber and roaring V12 fury. Today, it stands as a legend, not just for what it did, but for what it almost did, rewriting the rule book on what a road car could be before the people who built it realized the world wasn't ready. And maybe, just maybe, still isn't. The saga of the 1986 Group B rally cars, monsters like the Peugeot 205 T16, Audi Sport Quattro S1, and Lancia Delta S4, is one of the most electrifying, awe-inspiring, and tragic chapters in motorsport history. These were not just race cars, they were the embodiment of raw, unfiltered ambition. Machines designed to tear through the forests, mountains, and gravel roads of the world with the kind of speed and ferocity that made the hairs on your neck stand on end. They were the ultimate expression of engineering bravado, where innovation collided with danger in ways that no one quite anticipated. Group B was born from a radical set of FIA regulations in the early 1980s that threw out the rulebook on what rally cars could be. Instead of relying on heavy production-based vehicles, manufacturers were encouraged to experiment freely with lightweight materials, turbocharging, exotic suspensions, and aggressive aerodynamics. Homologation rules required only a handful of road cars, allowing for prototype-level technology to be raced in what were essentially street-legal beasts. The only real limitation was imagination and the appetite for power. The result was a parade of machines that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie rather than a rally stage. The Peugeot 205 T16, for example, appeared at first glance to be a modest hatchback, but under its skin was a mid-engine, turbocharged powerhouse, pushing around 450 to 550 horsepower in race trim, light enough to rocket over jumps and through tight, twisting roads with a precision that belied its blistering pace. Its compact size and insane grip allowed drivers to throw it into corners that left competitors gasping. Audi, already revolutionizing rallying with its Quattro all-wheel drive system, took the game to another level with the Sport Quattro S1. Its aggressive bodywork, enormous wings, and turbocharged 5-cylinder engine made it a rolling hurricane. It was brutal on gravel and asphalt alike, with a terrifying turbo whistle and the sort of acceleration that could launch it off jumps so high and far they seemed to defy physics. The driver's job wasn't just to steer, it was to wrestle a wild animal barely contained by carbon fiber and steel. Then there was the Lancia Delta S4, perhaps the most technically astonishing of all. It combined a supercharger and turbocharger in one engine to eliminate lag and deliver power instantaneously, a technological marvel that produced up to 600 horsepower in a car weighing barely over 2,000 pounds. Its power delivery was brutal and unpredictable, forcing even the most skilled drivers to maintain razor-sharp focus at all times. It could accelerate faster than most road cars could dream of, yet its brutal grip and sudden power surges meant a single misjudgment could lead to disaster. The speeds were mind-boggling. Group B cars could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in well under 3 seconds on gravel, dirt, and snow. They'd reach cornering speeds unheard of in rally history and launch off crests with such violence that spectators often watched them flying through the air, sometimes for dozens of yards. Crowds flocked to witness this spectacle, sometimes standing perilously close, captivated by the explosive combination of power, skill, and danger. Yet with great power came great risk. The very features that made Group B so thrilling, the lightweight construction, immense power, and minimal electronic aids, also made these cars incredibly difficult to control. Drivers pushed the limits of human ability and machine endurance every stage. Turbo lag, sudden torque spikes, and unpredictable handling kept them in a constant battle for survival. Tragedy was an inevitable part of the story. The 1986 season saw fatal crashes that shook the rally world to its core. The heartbreaking loss of Henri Tovinen and co-driver Sergio Cresto during the Tour de Corse was a turning point, an incident so devastating that it forced the FIA to take unprecedented action. The entire Group B class was banned mid-season, abruptly ending what had been one of the most exhilarating and dangerous eras in motorsport history. But despite their short-lived reign, the legacy of Group B cars is enormous. They reshaped the technical and cultural landscape of rally racing forever. Their innovations in all-wheel drive, turbocharging, and lightweight materials trickled down into road cars and modern motorsport disciplines. More than that, they captured the imagination of millions worldwide. Watching footage of an Audi Sport Quattro S1 hurtling through a forest at breakneck speed, or a Peugeot 205 T16 sliding perfectly sideways over a gravel corner still sends chills down the spine. Group B was a time when the line between man and machine blurred in the most extreme way possible. It was a spectacle of skill, courage, and engineering genius that soared to heights and speeds that have rarely been matched. But it was also a sobering reminder that pushing boundaries without limits carries a price. The cars flew, they slid, they thrilled, but ultimately they terrified everyone involved, from drivers to fans to officials. To this day, Group B remains a touchstone of rally legend, a fierce, unforgettable era when speed was king and the price of glory was dangerously high. It was raw, it was wild, and it was utterly unforgettable. The 1971 Mercedes-Benz C111 Wankel Prototype is more than just a footnote in automotive history. It represents a visionary crossroads where German engineering precision met the radical promise of rotary technology, a place where the future of performance was being rewritten, but only to be abruptly halted by the harsh realities of the era. This car stands as a monument to ambition and innovation, a story of what could have been had fate, regulation, and circumstance aligned differently. The C111 project itself began as a daring experiment in the late 1960s, initially designed to explore advanced aerodynamics, lightweight construction techniques, and alternative powertrains. Mercedes-Benz, always a pioneer in engineering, sought to create a vehicle that pushed the boundaries of speed, efficiency, and design, something that could rival the most exotic supercars of the time, yet showcase cutting-edge technology from the inside out. By the time the third iteration, the C111 was developed in 1971, the car had evolved into a sleek, futuristic wedge with unmistakable gull-wing doors and a body optimized for minimal drag and maximum stability. Its design was not just bold, it was a statement of intent, a hint at what supercars might become decades before the term was even widely used. Underneath its radical skin, the C111 housed a three-rotor Wankel rotary engine, an engine architecture vastly different from the traditional piston engine that dominated automotive powertrains. Unlike pistons moving up and down in cylinders, the Wankel engine uses triangular rotors spinning inside an oval chamber, resulting in smoother power delivery, fewer moving parts, and a high-revving nature that could theoretically produce incredible performance from a relatively small displacement. Mercedes-Benz pushed the envelope further, even experimenting with a four-rotor version of the Wankel engine in the C111. This was no mere test mule, it was a fully engineered supercar concept aimed at pushing the envelope of performance and technological prowess. The engine's compact size allowed for excellent weight distribution and a low center of gravity, promising agility and speed that could rival or surpass many of its contemporaries. Yet this promise came with steep challenges. The rotary engine's design, while innovative, was notoriously thirsty, consuming more fuel than comparable piston engines, and struggled to meet tightening emission standards that were beginning to shape the automotive landscape worldwide. Noise levels, while distinctive and evocative, raised concerns as well, especially as governments started implementing stricter regulations on vehicle sound and pollutants. Compounding these technical hurdles was the global context of the early 1970s. The looming oil crisis made fuel economy a critical concern, and the automotive industry suddenly found itself needing to balance performance with practicality and environmental responsibility. In this new reality, the C111's rotary engine, with its fuel hunger and emissions challenges, suddenly looked less like the future and more like a relic of an era soon to pass. Facing these growing obstacles, Mercedes-Benz made the difficult decision to halt the C111 rotary program. The car never reached public production, relegated instead to an iconic status as a prototype that demonstrated incredible potential but was ultimately deemed unfit for mass-market realities. The project was shelved, the rotary experiments ended, and the C111 was left as a gleaming what-if in automotive archives. But the story of the C111 doesn't end in disappointment. Its legacy rippled throughout Mercedes' engineering philosophy for decades, informing advances in aerodynamics, lightweight materials, and high-performance design. Moreover, it posed a tantalizing question that continues to intrigue car enthusiasts and historians. What if Mercedes-Benz had succeeded in making a rotary-powered supercar decades before Mazda's RX series popularized the Wankel engine? Could the C111 have redefined German performance cars? Might it have spurred a completely different supercar revolution, one focused on high-revving, smooth, and compact rotary powertrains? Imagining the C111 on the road, tearing through twisty mountain passes or screaming down the Autobahn, challenges our assumptions about automotive history. It was a car designed to blend raw speed with technological artistry, a machine that could have been a radical alternative to the piston-powered monsters that would dominate the following decades. Today, the Mercedes-Benz C111 III stands as an enduring symbol of bold innovation, a car that dared to dream big but was ultimately grounded by the realities of its time. It reminds us that automotive progress is as much about timing and external factors as it is about engineering genius. The C111 is a shining example of brilliance just out of reach, a prototype that whispered of a future never realized, but forever remembered in the annals of automotive legend. The 1992 Jaguar XJ220 V12 prototype is a fascinating and bittersweet chapter in the history of supercars, an ambitious vision that promised to redefine the boundaries of British automotive engineering, but ultimately became a legend of what might have been. When Jaguar first unveiled plans for the XJ220, they aimed to create not just another fast car, but a technological tour de force that would rival the world's best supercars of the early 1990s. Central to this dream was a naturally aspirated V12 engine, renowned for its smooth, exhilarating power delivery and iconic engine note, paired with an all-wheel drive AWD system designed to harness every ounce of performance. The idea was bold and unprecedented for Jaguar. The V12 promised a seamless blend of raw horsepower and refinement, a hallmark of Jaguar's heritage, while the AWD system was engineered to provide exceptional traction and handling in all conditions. This combination was meant to give drivers an unparalleled driving experience, unshakable confidence on twisty roads, and blistering speed on straights, all wrapped in a sleek aerodynamic body that could slice through the air with ease. Behind the scenes, the prototype was a marvel of engineering. Jaguar's engineers poured countless hours into tuning the V12 and perfecting the AWD system, pushing the car's performance envelope further than anyone had imagined possible. The sound of that V12 engine revving up to its redline was intoxicating, an auditory symbol of power, precision, and prestige. The AWD drivetrain promised to deliver that power smoothly to the pavement, reducing wheel spin and enhancing cornering grip, traits that would make the car a true driver's machine. Yet despite all this promise, the XJ220 V12 AWD prototype was caught in the crossfire of growing challenges. Jaguar soon faced a series of lawsuits and financial pressures, while emissions regulations and safety standards tightened globally. Meeting these new rules while maintaining the ambitious performance goals became an overwhelming hurdle. The complexity and cost of producing the V12 with AWD were simply too high for Jaguar's then limited resources. Reluctantly, the company shelved the V12 AWD plan and pivoted to a smaller twin-turbocharged V6 and a simpler rear-wheel drive layout. While the resulting production XJ220, powered by the Turbo V6, still achieved remarkable speeds and captured imaginations worldwide, it was a bittersweet compromise. Enthusiasts and collectors around the globe lamented the loss of the original V12 AWD concept, a car that promised so much but never reached the streets or racetracks in its intended form. The V12 prototype became a ghost in the Jaguar story, quietly tucked away in museums and private collections, an untouchable artifact of a supercar that almost changed the game. The impact of the XJ220 V12 AWD extends beyond its physical existence. It stands as a powerful symbol of the tension between engineering ambition and the harsh realities of the automotive industry. It reminds us that the path to innovation is often littered with sacrifices, compromises, and missed opportunities. Had Jaguar succeeded in bringing the V12 AWD XJ220 to market, it might have reshaped the supercar world, setting new standards for power delivery, handling, and refinement. Imagine the possibilities. A car combining the legendary smoothness and roar of a V12 with the confidence and traction of AWD, capable of demolishing records and redefining what it meant to be a supercar in the 1990s. It could have positioned Jaguar at the very pinnacle of performance car manufacturers, challenging the dominance of Ferrari, Porsche, and McLaren in ways few thought possible. Today, the V12 XJ220 prototype remains a subject of fascination and reverence. It haunts the imagination of car enthusiasts and historians alike, a reminder of the fleeting nature of innovation and the complex interplay of vision, technology, and business. The car that everyone wanted but never officially existed is a ghost story in the automotive world, an extraordinary machine whose legend grows with every passing year, inspiring dreams of speed, engineering brilliance, and the road not taken. The 1974 AMX3 is a remarkable and often overlooked milestone in automotive history, a bold, ambitious attempt by American Motors Corporation, AMC, to break free from the traditional mold of American muscle cars and step boldly into the exotic world of mid-engine supercars, dominated by European legends like Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Maserati. Unlike the typical big-block muscle machines that were built for straight-line speed and raw power, the AMX3 was designed with a radically different philosophy in mind: to create a high-performance, road-going sports car that combined precision engineering, cutting-edge design, and the unmistakable flair of Italian craftsmanship. What makes the AMX3 so unique is that while it was born from American engineering roots, it was largely crafted in Italy, merging the best of both automotive worlds. AMC collaborated with Giotto Bizzarini, a legendary figure in automotive design who had a hand in some of the most iconic race and sports cars of the era. The car's sleek, aerodynamic body was sculpted with Italian artistry, featuring sharp edges, muscular haunches, and an aggressive mid-engine stance that was unlike anything else coming out of Detroit or anywhere else in the United States at the time. Underneath the exotic Italian shell, the AMX3 packed a seriously potent powertrain. A 360-inch cubic, about 6-liter, AMC V8 engine tuned to produce roughly 340 horsepower, a respectable figure for the time and one that promised exciting performance. But what set the car apart wasn't just raw horsepower, it was the mid-engine layout. By positioning the engine behind the driver, AMC was attempting to achieve superior weight distribution, better handling balance, and enhanced cornering capabilities, traits that European sports cars had long been leveraging but were still rare in American production vehicles. The suspension and chassis were equally advanced, engineered for nimble handling and stability at high speeds. Early road tests reportedly revealed a car that could hold its own against more expensive European rivals, capable of reaching speeds around 170 miles per hour and delivering a driving experience that was thrilling and refined. Drivers noted the car's sharp responsiveness, gripping handling, and exotic feel that made it a true competitor in the supercar league. It was, in many ways, a glimpse of what American performance could become if it dared to think beyond muscle and straight-line acceleration. However, the AMX3's promise was ultimately crushed by a convergence of unfortunate circumstances. The early 1970s were a tumultuous time for the automotive industry, especially in the United States. Emissions regulations were tightening rapidly in response to growing environmental concerns. Fuel economy was becoming a priority in the wake of the 1973 oil crisis, and safety standards were becoming increasingly stringent. Meanwhile, AMC was a relatively small automotive maker with limited resources compared to the Detroit Big Three, making it difficult to shoulder the enormous costs of homologating, testing, and certifying such a complex and unconventional vehicle for U.S. roads. Moreover, the car's Italian construction added layers of complexity and expense. Building the AMX3 overseas meant expensive logistics, challenges in quality control, and difficulties in meeting evolving regulatory standards. As a result, AMC couldn't justify the financial investment needed to bring the car to market legally in the United States. The combination of bureaucracy, economic pressures, and changing market demands strangled the project before it could bloom. Only 5 or 6 AMX3s were ever completed, none of which were officially street legal in America. Instead, these rare prototypes and pre-production models became prized collector's items, enigmatic reminders of a bold experiment cut short. The AMX3's brief existence poses an intriguing question for automotive enthusiasts and historians alike. Was America truly on the cusp of creating a world-class supercar that could rival Ferrari? Or was the AMX3 simply an unattainable dream, too complex and ahead of its time to survive the harsh realities of the 1970s automotive landscape? Had it reached production, the AMX3 might have altered the course of American sports car history, introducing the world to a new breed of American performance that prized balance, sophistication, and international style alongside power. It could have paved the way for future mid-engine American supercars decades before other manufacturers dared to tread this path. In the end, the 1974 AMX3 remains a powerful symbol of ambition and innovation, a beautiful, rare, and exotic blend of American engineering and Italian design that dared to dream bigger than muscle cars or traditional sports cars. Though it never fully realized its potential, its legacy endures as a testament to what might have been an American supercar that challenged the status quo and for a fleeting moment threatened to rewrite the rules of the performance car world before bureaucracy and economic forces silenced its roar.
The 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe is not merely a car. It is an enduring symbol of raw power, cutting-edge engineering, and a time when the boundaries between racing legend and road-going machine were dangerously blurred. This extraordinary vehicle traces its roots directly to the celebrated 300 SLR race car, a dominant force in the golden age of motorsport, famed for its blistering pace and technical sophistication. Designed and named after Rudolf Uhlenhaut, the brilliant and exacting chief engineer at Mercedes-Benz, who was as much a test driver as a designer, the Uhlenhaut Coupe was a remarkable and rare machine created not just to race, but to showcase what was possible when no compromises were made. At its heart, the Uhlenhaut Coupe housed a 3-liter straight-8 engine, boasting around 310 horsepower at a time when even high-performance cars rarely approached such figures. What made this car truly legendary was its combination of lightweight construction, razor-sharp engineering, and the closed coupe design that enhanced aerodynamics for stability at extreme speeds. The coupe was capable of reaching speeds exceeding 180 miles per hour, an unimaginable feat for a street-legal vehicle in the mid-1950s. This wasn't simply a car to drive, it was a car that demanded mastery, courage, and a finely tuned connection between driver and machine. The Uhlenhaut was as thrilling as it was terrifying, an unrelenting missile that offered no room for error. But behind the car's beauty and performance lay a darker story. The 1955 motorsports season was marred by the catastrophic Le Mans disaster, where a Mercedes 300 SLR driven by Pierre Levegh crashed into the crowd, killing more than 80 spectators and the driver himself. This tragedy sent shockwaves through the racing world and changed it forever. Mercedes-Benz, a company that had always prided itself on engineering excellence and safety, took the unprecedented step of withdrawing entirely from competitive motorsport. This decision was as much about corporate responsibility and conscience as it was about grief and respect for the victims. With Mercedes-Benz stepping away from the track, the fate of the Uhlenhaut Coupe was sealed. Only 2 were ever built, kept under tight wraps as internal company cars and testbeds rather than vehicles for public sale. These machines became ghosts of a lost era, vehicles that symbolized the zenith of engineering ambition and the sobering consequences of speed unchecked. Over the decades, the 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe transcended its role as a mere car to become a priceless piece of automotive history, a reminder of what was achieved and at what cost. Its legend only grew with time, and the car's mystique culminated in one of the highest-profile automotive sales ever recorded. In 2022, one of these rare Uhlenhaut coupes sold at auction for an astonishing $143 million, making it not just the most expensive Mercedes-Benz ever sold, but one of the most valuable cars in the world. This staggering price reflected not only its rarity and performance, but also the deep emotional and historical weight it carries. The 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe challenges us to reflect on the dual nature of automotive progress, the intoxicating allure of speed and innovation, and the moral and practical boundaries that sometimes must be respected. It embodies a moment in time when engineers dared to push the limits of what a car could be, creating machines that were almost too powerful for the world around them. At the same time, it reminds us that with great power comes great responsibility, sometimes a lesson learned through tragedy and self-restraint. To this day, the Uhlenhaut Coupe remains a rare window into a bygone era of motorsport, where bravery and danger were inseparable companions. It's a car that not only defined performance for its generation, but also serves as a poignant testament to the complex legacy of speed, an eternal symbol of a car too fast, too raw, and too consequential, even for its maker's conscience. Owning or even witnessing this machine is to grasp the breathtaking extremes of automotive history, the perfect fusion of art, science, and human spirit, forever etched into the story of racing and road cars alike.
The 1967 Ford GT40 Mark IV road car is one of the most compelling and dramatic stories in the annals of automotive history, a tale of triumph, ambition, and an unyielding passion for speed that ultimately collided head-on with the realities of engineering and safety. Born from the thunderous success of the GT40 Mark IV race car, which spectacularly dominated the 1967 24 Hours of Le Mans with a historic 1-2-3 finish, this road car was Ford's bold attempt to translate track supremacy into a street-legal supercar that would capture the imaginations of enthusiasts worldwide. But the raw truth is this: the IV road car was too savage, too loud, and too extreme to ever be practical on public roads, and Ford made the unprecedented decision to halt its production before it ever truly began. At the core of this incredible story lies the car's monstrous 7.0-liter or 427 cubic inch Ford V8 engine, a power plant that was no stranger to destruction, tearing through circuits with an unrelenting fury and delivering horsepower figures that seemed otherworldly for the era. Unlike many road cars that water down their engines for comfort and drivability, the Mark IV road car retained the race-spec engine nearly intact, producing raw, unfiltered power that could overwhelm even the most skilled driver. The engine's guttural roar echoed through the streets like a beast released from its cage, a constant reminder that this was not a machine meant for leisurely Sunday drives. But power alone didn't tell the whole story. The Mark IV road car's chassis was a marvel of racing technology, lightweight and stiff, designed to withstand the rigors of endurance racing rather than the imperfections of asphalt streets. The suspension setup, tailored for high-speed cornering on smooth racetracks, translated into a bone-jarring experience on ordinary roads, punishing the driver with every bump and dip. Aerodynamics played a major role too.
The sleek, low-slung bodywork, optimized for downforce and stability at over 200 miles per hour, sacrificed low-speed maneuverability and visibility. Driving the Mark IV was a test of nerve and skill, requiring the utmost concentration and respect. Testing the car on public roads revealed the brutal truth. The Mark IV was nearly undrivable in typical traffic conditions. Its throttle was brutally sensitive, making smooth acceleration a challenge. Its steering was heavy and unforgiving, and its ride was harsh enough to fatigue even the most dedicated drivers. Noise regulations were an immediate obstacle, as the car's thunderous exhaust and engine notes shattered local limits and stirred complaints from residents and law enforcement. The car was so loud and aggressive that it almost seemed like a rolling hazard, a race car masquerading as a street vehicle. Ford's executives faced a crossroads. On one hand, the Mark IV road car was a spectacular embodiment of racing technology and American engineering prowess, a rolling legend with the potential to cement Ford's position in the supercar pantheon. On the other hand, it posed serious risks. It was unsafe for most drivers, impractical for daily use, and potentially damaging to Ford's brand if it was perceived as reckless or irresponsible. After extensive deliberation, the company made the rare and remarkable choice to cancel the Mark IV road car project altogether, pulling the plug before the car could be produced or sold in any meaningful quantity. Instead, Ford chose to continue offering the earlier Mark IV3 road cars, which struck a more reasonable balance between performance and usability. The Mark IV3 was still a high-performance supercar, but one with softened edges, a car that could be driven by enthusiasts on real roads without turning every trip into a white-knuckle ordeal. The Mark IV remained a race-exclusive beast, a machine that would dominate tracks but never officially roam the streets. This decision makes the 1967 Ford GT40 Mark IV road car unique in automotive history, a car banned not by governments or regulators, but by the very people who built it. It serves as a profound reminder of the thin line automakers must walk between pushing the envelope of performance and ensuring safety, usability, and legal compliance. Even the most powerful and passionate creators sometimes have to put the brakes on their own inventions. Today, the Mark IV road car exists largely as a myth and a tantalizing what-if in the collector and enthusiast communities. It's a ghost story, a car that could have rewritten the rules of the supercar world by bringing pure race car ferocity to the streets. Its rarity and mystique only fuel its legend, a symbol of a bygone era when raw power and racing success tempted manufacturers to flirt with the edge of control, sometimes too far. For those who understand its legacy, the Mark IV road car represents the ultimate dream and the ultimate cautionary tale. It's a reminder that sometimes the most exhilarating machines aren't meant for the road we drive every day, but for the track, where their ferocity can be harnessed safely and fully. The story of the 1967 Ford GT40 Mark IV road car is a thrilling chapter in automotive history, one where speed, ambition, and engineering excellence met the harsh reality of the streets, resulting in a legendary car that was simply too much for the world to handle. The 2005 Chrysler ME412 is one of the most compelling and untold stories of American automotive ambition. A supercar that promised to shatter expectations, redefine performance standards, and challenge the established European titans of speed, yet quietly disappeared into the shadows before it could ever see the light of day. Conceived at a time when the supercar world was dominated by the likes of Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Bugatti, Chrysler's ME412 was an audacious statement of intent, a homegrown American hypercar with a heart and soul fierce enough to battle the world's best. But despite its incredible engineering and jaw-dropping performance potential, this radical machine never made it beyond the prototype phase, becoming instead a legend whispered about in automotive circles, a glimpse of what could have been, buried by the realities of cost, safety, and corporate caution. Underneath its futuristic carbon fiber skin, the ME412 packed an engineering marvel, a 6-liter V12 engine equipped with not one or two, but 4 turbochargers. This quad-turbocharged beast churned out over 850 horsepower and prodigious torque figures that could launch the car from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just a blistering 3.1 seconds, with a theoretical top speed approaching an astonishing 248 miles per hour. At a time when most supercars were still struggling to breach 200 miles per hour, Chrysler was aiming for the elite 250 mile per hour club, one that few manufacturers could claim membership in. This was not just a car built for speed, it was a technological showcase, featuring advanced all-wheel drive for improved traction, active suspension systems designed to keep the car planted during high-speed cornering, and a focus on aerodynamic efficiency that made the ME412 a cutting-edge performer. Yet, despite being fully operational and capable of astonishing feats on the track and road, the ME412 was never destined for production. The reasons are as complex as the car itself. Corporate executives, weighing the enormous financial investment required to develop, certify, and produce a supercar of this magnitude, deemed the project too risky. Building a vehicle that could rival Bugatti's Veyron meant not only astronomical development costs, but also significant marketing and after-sales support expenses, all while entering an ultra-competitive and niche market segment that was, at that moment, dominated by brands with decades of supercar heritage. Beyond the financial and branding hurdles, there were serious safety and regulatory concerns. The sheer power and speed of the ME412 made it a challenge to tame for public roads. Emission regulations were tightening, crash safety standards becoming stricter, and insurance companies were wary of such a wild and powerful machine being unleashed on public streets. Engineering a street-legal supercar that could meet these standards while preserving the rawness and performance that defined the ME412 was a monumental challenge. Moreover, Chrysler's core identity as a maker of muscle cars and mass-market vehicles may have made the leadership hesitant to leap so far into the exotic supercar realm. The question loomed: could Chrysler successfully transition from its roots and command respect on the global hypercar stage? Could the American market embrace a $700,000-plus exotic supercar from a brand better known for its V8-powered sedans and SUVs? All these factors conspired to bury the ME412 project. The prototypes were tucked away into obscurity, with only a handful of insiders and enthusiasts aware of this unrealized marvel. Despite the disappointment, the ME412 remains a symbol of bold ambition and technical excellence, a reminder that American automotive engineering can rival the world's best when given the chance. Had Chrysler pushed the ME412 into production, it might have rewritten the history books by becoming the first American hypercar to break the 250-mile-per-hour barrier, directly challenging European icons like Bugatti Veyron. It could have sparked a new era of American supercar dominance, inspiring competitors and pushing technological boundaries across the industry. Instead, it became a fascinating what-if, a glimpse of an alternate timeline where Chrysler dared to dream bigger and race faster. Today, the ME412 exists as a ghost of unfulfilled potential, a prototype that showed the world how close Chrysler came to greatness before the realities of business and regulation intervened. It serves as a monument to the fine line between visionary innovation and practical restraint, highlighting the enormous challenges manufacturers face when chasing extreme performance in a complex global market. For enthusiasts, it remains an object of reverence, a spectacular engineering achievement locked away in the vaults of automotive history. The story of the 2005 Chrysler ME412 is more than just about horsepower and speed. It's a tale of ambition, innovation, and the harsh realities that shape the automotive world. It asks us to imagine a future where American engineering not only joined but led the hypercar elite, challenging Europe's best on their own turf. It stands as a testament to what might have been, forever etched in the annals of automotive lore as a raw, wild, and beautiful machine that was simply too ahead of its time to survive.